The ship hummed like a cat that had been left too long in the sun, a low vibration that rattled loose screws and patience in equal measure. Marcus Hale crouched over a console, muttering to himself in a mixture of frustration and disbelief, and the ship's AI, which had developed an annoyingly sharp sense of humor, decided that now was the perfect time to comment. "Lieutenant, I have analyzed your emotional output, and I must say, it is impressive how consistently you fail at basic interface protocols." Marcus shot the AI a glare that could have powered a small reactor. "Oh, come on. I'm recalibrating the flux stabilizers. That's complicated stuff. You wouldn't understand." The AI's response was a mechanical sigh, which Marcus suspected was its version of rolling its non-existent eyes. Somewhere deep in the ship, the hum shifted, a subtle vibration that made the fluorescent lights flicker. Marcus froze. The distress signal had been faint, a sputtering pulse barely distinguishable from cosmic background noise. Yet here it was, growing stronger as the ship drifted closer to the coordinates. Marcus adjusted the controls, trying not to imagine the worst-case scenario. The last time a distress signal had popped up, they had found a cargo pod full of squawking alien rodents, none of which had been remotely friendly. He swallowed his frustration and tapped at the console. "Bring up the signal, full spectrum. Let's see what we're dealing with before I accidentally vaporize whatever's out there." The holographic display flickered, forming the outline of a small ship drifting like a leaf in the void. Its hull was battered, scorched in places, but intact enough to suggest someone, or something, inside had survived. "Lieutenant, I recommend caution," the AI said. "Given the vessel's trajectory and the radiation levels, the probability of its occupant being friendly is approximately 43%. That is lower than average for rescue scenarios." Marcus snorted. "So basically it's 50-50, with a tiny margin for us getting eaten. Comforting." He grabbed his utility belt and strapped in his blaster, checking the ammo and secretly hoping he wouldn't have to use it. When they docked, the ship hissed open and Marcus floated into the airlock, immediately bumping his head on the frame. "Zero gravity, my old friend," he muttered, rubbing the tender spot. The interior of the alien craft smelled like burnt circuitry and ozone, with faint trails of alien pollen drifting in the air, glowing faintly under the lights. Somewhere, a panel sparked. Marcus yelped and waved his hands like a conductor orchestrating an invisible symphony. "Not today, not today." The first glimpse of her took his breath away. She was small, probably 14 or 15 by human standards, with the proportions of a human girl, but the kind of elegance that made ordinary physics feel apologetic. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, catching the light in subtle shifts. Her ears were long, tapering gracefully like silver crescents, and they twitched ever so slightly with her attention. But it was her eyes, liquid silver, reflective, infinite, that rooted Marcus to the spot. The girl tilted her head, regarding him with a mixture of curiosity and something heavier, something that hinted at loss too vast for her years. "Hello," she said in a voice soft as a whisper but carrying weight. "You are human." Marcus stammered, trying to find the right words while the absurdity of the situation wrapped itself around him. Yes, human, definitely. No tentacles, just me, very human." The girl raised one eyebrow, or at least the alien equivalent of it, and Marcus realized she was probably amused. We received your distress signal," he added, unsure if he should have said more. "I am Lyra," she said, inclining her head. "I escaped, alone." There was a pause, heavy and fragile, and Marcus felt his chest tighten. Alone. That single word carried years of silence, echoing in the empty corridors of his own memories. His parents had been gone for a decade, swallowed by a distant conflict he never spoke about. And yet here was Lyra, a stranger echoing grief he thought he had buried. He forced himself to focus. "You're safe now. We'll get you to the ship." He gestured toward the docking corridor, but as he floated closer, he nearly collided with a control panel. "Gravity," he muttered again. "Seriously, zero gravity and I still manage to fail." Lyra giggled, an ethereal sound that made the hum of the ship feel warmer somehow. "You are clumsy," she said. "And you are terrifyingly graceful," Marcus replied, trying not to flinch as her ears twitched in response to his words. She blinked slowly, and he wondered if she was considering whether humans were always this inept or if he was just exceptionally so. They navigated the narrow corridors together, Marcus clumsily floating beside her, Lyra's movements a delicate ballet that left him in a constant state of awe. The ship's AI occasionally interjected with commentary on Marcus's inability to pilot even a handcart in zero gravity, which made both of them laugh despite the tension. Somewhere along the way, Lyra reached out and touched the console, her fingers brushing over alien symbols. The lights responded to her presence, flowing like liquid. "You control this?" Marcus asked, amazed. "I know," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "It responds to me." The hum shifted again, warmer this time, almost protective. Marcus frowned, realizing she wasn't just a survivor, she was something more, something powerful. And yet she was so small, so fragile. Finally, they reached the airlock leading to his ship. Marcus floated toward it, carefully helping her through. "You're okay now," he said, though the words sounded fragile even to his own ears. Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting starlight and something else, hope. "I have no parents," she said softly, and the weight of the statement pressed against him like gravity multiplied tenfold. "Will you be my father?" Marcus froze, his breath caught between disbelief and the surge of emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He wanted to laugh to diffuse the tension, but the humor failed him. He wanted to argue, to explain that he was unqualified, incapable, a disaster in zero gravity and probably in life too, but none of it mattered. He looked at her, small and luminous, and something inside him cracked open. Tears gathered unbidden in his eyes as he swallowed hard. "Yes," he said, his voice thick, raw, trembling. "Yes, I will." Lyra smiled, the corners of her mouth lifting just enough to transform the air around them. The AI interjected with a cheerful, if awkward, observation. "Probability of human emotional collapse, 78%. Observation confirmed." Marcus shook his head and laughed through his tears, muttering, "You're not helpful." And for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt the weight of his grief begin to lift, replaced by something tentative, dangerous, and yet utterly wonderful: responsibility, connection, a family he hadn't thought he could have. Lyra, with her long ears and silver eyes, floated beside him, and in that suspended moment between stars, the universe seemed slightly less cold. Marcus stared at the navigation console like it had personally insulted him, the flickering lights reflecting his mounting confusion. Lyra floated beside him, ears twitching in perfect rhythm to some unspoken beat, a soft glow emanating from her skin that gave her an almost celestial quality. "You know, humans really shouldn't be trusted with buttons," she said, her tone dry but teasing, the kind of humor that disarmed him instantly. "I resent that," Marcus muttered, pressing a sequence of controls that promptly made the ship emit a noise somewhere between a foghorn and a hiccup. Sparks danced along a panel, and he quickly ducked, narrowly avoiding a small explosion that smelled faintly of burnt toast. Lyra giggled, floating closer, her fingers tracing a path over the console that immediately calmed the erratic systems. "See," she said, eyes gleaming, "the ship likes me, you less so." Marcus groaned. "Great. My new life is babysitting a techno-genius alien with gravity-defying hair while the ship judges me constantly." He paused, blinking at her quizzical expression. "Did I mention your hair is very alien?" Lyra smirked. "Thank you, your hair is messy." Despite the teasing, they were beginning to synchronize as a team. Marcus realized that in zero gravity, coordination wasn't just skill, it was comedy. He floated toward a control panel only to ricochet off a bulkhead, spinning like a pinball. Lyra, with an elegant flick of her long ears, redirected him mid-spin using a small telekinetic pulse, sending him gently to the floor with a soft thud. "Careful," she said. Your species is clumsy. The humor of the moment settled the tension, but it didn't erase the undercurrent of danger. Lyra's past was a shadow that followed them quietly. She spoke reluctantly about her parents, explorers like them, caught in a conspiracy that left her stranded in space. The details were sparse, a few cryptic phrases about a rogue faction and stolen research, but her sorrow was palpable. Marcus found himself both protector and student, learning from her alien abilities while simultaneously teaching her the chaotic art of human improvisation. Their first real test came sooner than expected. Sensors flared with a warning and the ship's AI announced in its usual sarcastic tone, "Unidentified vessels approaching. Hostility probability, 83%. Humor level. Negligible." Marcus groaned, fumbling with his blaster. "Fantastic. Nothing like a high-speed encounter with potential death to start the day." Lyra's eyes narrowed, a faint silver glow pulsing along her skin. "We can bypass them," she said, fingers moving in graceful arcs over the console. The lights on the dashboard shifted, and the surrounding space seemed to warp, a visual distortion as if reality itself had become elastic. Marcus blinked, his stomach lurching. "You're bending space," he muttered. That's illegal in at least 3 solar systems." She smirked, "Not if you do it quietly." And with that, the vessel shimmered, weaving through the approaching scavenger ships as if they were mere ghosts. Marcus barely held onto the railing, his usual bravado failing him entirely. "Next time," he gasped, "I vote we take the scenic route." Lyra laughed, a sound like wind chimes stirred by distant stars, and he felt his heart loosen in a way it hadn't since his parents died. Once they escaped the immediate threat, Marcus tried to regain some semblance of control over the ship. He taught Lyra about Earth food, which in zero gravity quickly devolved into a comedic disaster. Flour, eggs, and noodles floated like tiny galaxies around the kitchen module, Marcus trying to catch a rogue egg with one hand while Lyra laughed uncontrollably, her ears flicking to redirect floating droplets away from the console. "Your planet's cuisine is messy," she said, barely containing her amusement. "You're not helping," Marcus groaned, wiping sticky dough off his uniform. He realized, though, that this chaos was a kind of bonding. Each laugh, each clumsy collision, each shared moment of human and alien absurdity built a fragile bridge between them. Lyra's presence, so alien yet disarmingly human in her expressions, drew him out of his grief. He was no longer just a survivor haunted by loss. He was a father figure in training, and the responsibility felt terrifyingly exhilarating. Their journey took them through a region of space where gravity fluctuated unpredictably, nebulae bending light in kaleidoscopic waves. Marcus watched in awe as Lyra manipulated the currents, guiding them through cosmic hazards with ease, her ears subtly twitching as if reading the gravitational music of the universe. Marcus tried to mimic her, floating helplessly in the shifting fields, accidentally firing his blaster at a harmless energy cluster, causing it to spark harmlessly but spectacularly. "You're a menace," Lyra said, laughing as the sparks drifted past them. Amid these dangerous yet comical escapades, Marcus learned more about Lyra's intellect and wit. She had an uncanny ability to read alien technology like a human reads a book, often cracking jokes in the process. "This is simpler than baking a souffle," she said once, nudging him away from a glowing control panel. Marcus nearly swallowed his own tongue laughing. "Baking a souffle doesn't usually involve alien death rays," he replied, earning a mischievous grin from her. Despite the levity, the emotional undercurrent remained. Lyra's loneliness was palpable, and Marcus often found himself pausing, catching her gaze when she thought he wasn't looking. Each revelation about her past, her parents' last mission, the betrayal that left her orphaned, pierced through his defenses. He comforted her, holding her close in the small, zero-gravity living quarters, whispering reassurances that sometimes felt more like pleas to himself. "I won't let anything happen to you," he murmured, and she smiled, resting her long ears against his shoulder like a silent affirmation. By the chapter's end, Marcus realized he was no longer just a guide or protector. He was becoming family, and the humor, the misadventures, the endless floating chaos, all of it, had cemented a bond that went beyond survival. They were a team, fragile yet resilient, drifting together through an indifferent cosmos, armed with laughter, ingenuity, and an emerging sense of love neither had fully expected. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, nebulae swirling in impossible colors, and Marcus floated beside Lyra, still clumsy but somehow less afraid. "Next time," he muttered, eyes on the infinite horizon, "let's aim for a galaxy without exploding rocks." Lyra's soft laughter echoed in the compartment, and he knew, with a certainty both terrifying and exhilarating, that they would face whatever came next together. Marcus floated near the observation deck, staring at the swirling colors of the nearby quasar, as if it were an interstellar kaleidoscope designed solely to mock him. Lyra hovered beside him, her long ears twitching in perfect synchronization with the low hum of the ship, casting a soft silver glow across the control panel. "You know, if humans stared at cosmic phenomena this long, your species would develop a reputation for staring contests with stars," she said, voice light, teasing, but her eyes betrayed a hint of seriousness. "I prefer to call it contemplative awe," Marcus replied, leaning back and nearly tipping over in zero gravity. "Awe is more dignified than staring like a frightened cat." Lyra giggled, flicking a small telekinetic pulse to steady him. "Dignity is overrated," she said. The laughter was brief. Sensors blared suddenly, slicing through the playful calm, and the AI's sardonic voice announced, "Unidentified fleet detected. Hostility probability 100%. Humor quotient 0. Panic level recommended maximum." Marcus groaned, tugging at his utility belt. "Fantastic. I was hoping for one quiet day." Apparently, the universe didn't get the memo. Lyra's expression sharpened, silver eyes glowing brighter. "It's them, the faction responsible for my parents." Marcus's heart sank. He had expected trouble, yes, but seeing the name of the enemy written in her eyes brought a reality he hadn't wanted to face. The final confrontation was unavoidable. "All right," he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "Let's go give them a tour they'll never forget, preferably one without us being vaporized." The ship shuddered as the enemy fleet appeared in the distance, hulking vessels bristling with weaponry. Marcus, gripping a railing for balance, muttered, "I'm suddenly very grateful for humor. If I die, at least it'll be funny." Lyra rolled her eyes, though a faint smirk tugged at her lips. "You are dramatic," she said, floating to the console and manipulating alien technology with ease. "Watch and learn, human." They wove the ship through a maze of gravitational anomalies, nebulae, and energy fields, Lyra guiding with precision, while Marcus attempted to keep up, often colliding with bulkheads or floating crates. At one point, he accidentally fired his blaster at a control panel, causing a harmless but spectacular cascade of sparks. "You are hopeless," Lyra said, laughter threading through her words as she corrected his trajectory with a subtle gesture of her hand. Finally, they reached the enemy station, a colossal structure orbiting a dead star, its surface bristling with turrets. "We're really doing this?" Marcus asked, voice tight but tinged with nervous humor. "Yes," Lyra replied softly, "because if we don't, nothing changes, and I cannot let them get away with what they did." Marcus nodded, swallowing hard, feeling the weight of his responsibility, no longer just as a soldier or survivor, but as her protector, her family. Infiltration was messy, thrilling, and at times hilarious. Marcus and Lyra moved through the station's corridors, using a mix of human improvisation and alien ingenuity. Marcus slipped on an oily patch, arms flailing, inadvertently knocking out a guard with a well-timed elbow. Lyra's ears twitched in amusement, her silver eyes glinting as she whispered, "Clumsy but effective. Keep it up." They dodged energy turrets, navigated shifting gravity fields, and Lyra occasionally poked fun at Marcus's panicked expressions, her humor a constant anchor amid the tension. They found the central control hub where the faction's leader, a towering figure in a dark exosuit, waited. Lyra confronted him, her small frame unyielding despite the danger. "You took them from me," she said, her voice steady, but her ears twitched with restrained fury. Marcus, beside her, felt a surge of pride and fear, realizing how far he had come from the man who had drifted through space alone months ago. "And we're here to ensure that stops now," he added, attempting authority and hoping it carried enough weight. The battle that followed was both chaotic and inventive. Lyra manipulated energy currents, redirecting turrets against the enemy, while Marcus improvised with gravity fields, floating crates, and his blaster in a series of unpredictable maneuvers. One misfired shot knocked over a console, triggering a chain reaction that caused the station's power to surge and flicker dramatically. Lyra laughed despite herself. "You have a unique approach to destruction," she said. Marcus grinned, dodging sparks. "It's called art." Finally, the faction's leader, overwhelmed and trapped by their combined ingenuity, surrendered. Lyra, hands trembling slightly, demanded the truth about her parents, and Marcus stood beside her, providing silent support. The leader confessed, revealing a complex web of intergalactic espionage, stolen research, and betrayal. Lyra's parents had sacrificed themselves to protect knowledge vital to the galaxy, leaving her orphaned, but she now had the power to honor their legacy. With the station secured and the rogue faction neutralized, Marcus and Lyra returned to the ship. Exhaustion was heavy in zero gravity, but humor threaded through their relief. Lyra attempted to cook, a floating celebratory meal, noodles drifting like cosmic serpents, and Marcus fumbled through the process, laughing as eggs and flour orbited them in chaotic orbits. "Next time," Marcus said, dodging a rogue noodle, "we eat at a planet with gravity." Lyra giggled, the sound echoing warmly through the ship. As the stars stretched endlessly outside, Marcus reflected on the journey. He was no longer the solitary, grief-stricken man who had stumbled upon a mysterious signal. He had grown into someone capable of love, responsibility, and unyielding courage, with a bond forged through danger, humor, and shared grief. Lyra, once a lonely survivor, now had a father figure, a protector, and a friend who would navigate the cosmos with her. Their laughter mingled, floating in zero gravity, a testament to resilience and connection. In the quiet that followed, Marcus held Lyra close, her long ears brushing against his shoulder, and whispered softly, "We made it, together." She rested her head against him, silver eyes reflecting the starlight, and smiled. The galaxy was vast, uncertain, and sometimes perilous, but for the first time in his life, Marcus felt truly at home. The stars beyond the viewport seemed to shimmer in agreement, the hum of the ship echoing the steady rhythm of their hearts, and he knew that whatever challenges awaited, they would face them side by side, laughter and courage lighting the way. And in that moment, amid the infinite expanse of space, Marcus realized that loss had been transformed into something stronger, grief had given way to love, and a fractured, lonely man had become a father, a protector, and a family.